The Holy Gospel according to Luke. Praise to you, O Christ. Then Jesus and his disciples arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. As he stepped out on land, a man of the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back to the abyss. Now there was on the hillside a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter the swine. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swineherd saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and the country. Then the people came out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got in the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. So, Martin Luther really liked Paul's letter to the Galatians, probably because Galatians is where Paul makes his strongest case that we are saved by faith and not the law. According to Paul, the law, that's with a capital L, has served its purpose and is no longer necessary. Before faith came, we were imprisoned and guarded under the law until faith would be revealed. The law was our disciplinarian. The word disciplinarian refers to a servant who was responsible for leading a child to and from school and ensuring that that child's behavior was proper. It's pedagogos, I think, disciplinarian. The word means child leader, or probably more literally boy leader, since only boys were allowed to go to school in ancient Greek culture. These child leaders were not sweet little Mary Poppins nannies or even benevolent tutors. They could be harsh and even violent in their discipline because any inappropriate behavior on the part of the child reflected badly on them and could lead to them being punished even more severely than the child. Paul is saying that the law was our keeper, that it confined us and kept us under restraint until Christ came. But now we no longer need this harsh taskmaster because we have faith. But what does Paul mean when he says we are justified by faith? Luther's statement about justification is that we are saved or justified by grace through faith. It's a simple, straightforward statement, except that growing up as a child and later as a college student and even as a seminarian, I sometimes got my grace and my bys and my throughs mixed up in my head, and sometimes it would come out that we were saved by faith through grace. But if we are saved by faith, then our salvation is our action, not God's, which is not possible because we humans cannot save ourselves no matter how hard we try. I finally got this straight in my head, and then I come to Paul's reading today. And Paul says, therefore, the law was our disciplinarian until Christ came, okay so far, so that we might be justified by faith. So now I'm confused again. Is Paul saying that our faith is what matters? That our faith is what tips the scales in our favor? No. It's a Paul thing. You see, Paul doesn't write the way that scholarly theologians do today. There are no computers, there's no copy and paste, there's no tidy up and no editors to say, did you really mean to say that we're saving ourselves? And all the rest. He writes letters, and they're organized verbally. He knows what he wants to say when he starts, but he tends to get sidetracked. I'm thinking that, Paul was probably a little ADHD, or a little, what is it? It used to be in the Myers-Briggs, a little P, a perceiver. Ooh, shiny object, So his letters are filled with digressions and tangents. This means that sometimes the subject of a sentence or a thought might be found 1 or 3 or even more verses back from where you're reading. This drove me crazy in my class on Paul, because we were invited to come in 15 or 20 minutes early, and Dr. Kalin, would help us read through the Greek passages that might be on our exam. And I got one day, it was like a verse at a time, and it's like, I'm struggling, and finally Ev laughs and says, the problem you're having is that the subject of that sentence was 4 verses ago. And you have to remember that the subject was back there, because that way you can bring that forward, because all the verses in between have been a side thought. So I finally got the verse done, and I remembered that for the exam. So the faith that Paul speaks of is the faith of Christ. Since Christ is the subject of the previous verses, which we did not read, it is Christ's faith that Paul is saying saves us. Christ was faithful in coming to live among us. Christ was faithful in completing his mission, even though it meant the cross. And Christ was faithful in fulfilling God's plan to set us free from the confinement of the law. So what about our faith? Does it matter? Do our trusts and doubts and all the places in between make a difference in our being justified? Well, yes, sort of. Our faith is a part of this process, but only when it is grounded in the faith of Christ and in God's actions. So what is faith, and how do we know if we have it? When most theologians, and I include all of us here because theology is just talking about God, and we do that a lot, especially after church, we go and we talk about God. So when we start talking about faith, we often start by talking about what faith is not. Faith is not, first of all, believing in the doctrines of the church. Belief in the Trinity, the virgin birth, all of those things you're taught are essential. They might be a central part of how many individuals experience their faith. But believing these things is not having faith. Second, faith is not accepting beliefs or doctrines on someone else's authority that you don't experience to be true on a personal level. Whether it's the church, that's with a capital C, tradition, teachers, pastors, even parents, because I said so may be a good reason to clean up your room and eat your veggies, but it's not a good foundation for faith. Third, faith is not a vague spirituality or a warm, fuzzy, belief-filled attitude towards life. In the past, faith has often been defined as accepting church doctrines and anything your pastor tells you. So many modern forms of Christianity, modern iterations of Christianity, define faith as an emotion. It doesn't matter what you believe or even what kind of behavior your belief leads to. The main thing is to be a believing person. This is not faith. So if faith is not following the rules, not saying the right things, and not an unquestioning acceptance of what you're taught, and it does not mean having to be all polite little cookie cutter production line Christians all saying and doing the same thing. So what is faith? Faith is really a lot of things, and I'm probably already running behind, and so I won't try to do them all. But there are a few I've picked out. I think some of these, yes, my footnote says some of these come from Douglas John Hall, who I'm very fond of. Things that resonate with me as a beginning point. Faith is trust. We can't have faith if we don't already have a relationship with God. Because it's only in relationship that we can build trust. This trust building is an ongoing process. It's not something we do once and for all, and neither is faith. We can't ever say we have it, faith, because faith isn't a possession. Faith is a result of God's love and grace. It's the kind of gift that we continue receiving throughout our lives. And faith looks ahead. There's something incomplete about faith. Even in our most treasured human relationships, there's always an element of incompleteness. Trusting another person has an element of risk. It makes us long for a time when there will be no barriers and no doubts and no hesitation, when trust will be easy and perfect and natural. And most importantly for me, because this has been my life in a nutshell, faith allows doubt. Many of us were raised, I'm talking generationally, with the idea that faith means accepting doctrines and beliefs that others teach us as true. Period. You have to believe that. That's what faith is. And doubt, so skepticism about some or all of these claims was defined as doubt. But if faith is understood as a process of trust that develops within an ongoing relationship with God, doubt makes a lot of sense as part of our faith. Think about your closest relationships with your spouse, your children or parents, your best friends. These relationships require give and take. You trust and are trusted by the other person, but this trust is constantly tested. And this is a beginning place for faith. But faith is a daily and lifelong journey. I mean, Nessa was baptized today. Does Nessa have a complete, fully formed, perfect faith? Heavens no. Nessa is just beginning her journey of faith. And we're going to help her. We all made a promise that we're going to help her on that journey of faith and understanding. So in all of life's and faith's ebbs and flows, and in our times of great trust and our times of great doubt and fear and despair, faith is a journey. I don't know about you, but mine's had a lot of twists and turns. And I hope that here, what we try and do at this church is we try to not answer all your questions and fill in all your doubts. We just go on the journey with you to help you figure out what's going in your life and probably teach you some stuff along the way. So that's how we help others on their journey of faith, and that's what we invite people to do with us. Amen.